Hey everybody, today we're going to look at how to install the custom LED Blaster-X Retrofit Kit for the Kawasaki H2 SX and SX SE models. The retrofit kit installs into the factory taillight assembly according to the following procedure. The main tool we are going to be working with today is a Dremel with a standard cutting wheel attachment. The factory taillight is glued shut. The only way to get inside is according to this specific technique that we've developed over the years of making these retrofit kits. With the tool set to a medium speed, the idea is to cut into the interface where the red plastic and the black plastic meet. You basically want to split that seam right in the middle. The important part of this process is to not cut all the way through into the housing. You want to leave some plastic material left, which will be cracked open later. The reason being, if we cut all the way through, when we go to put the lens back on, it's going to be shorter than it was originally, and this will change the fitment on the motorcycle. So as you can see here, I'm slowly working my way across the top of the lens, or actually the bottom of the lens, keeping the tool moving. You'll find that it melts the plastic more than it cuts it, which is okay. Later on we'll clean the burrs off, and it'll be a nice clean finish. So the important part to remember is that we're not cutting all the way through into the cavity inside. There's some material left inside the groove after the tool has passed through. And if we need to, we'll make a few passes. The idea is to get the plastic in that groove thin enough that we can crack it open with a screwdriver with a flathead, as you'll see later. I suggest you watch this whole portion through to the end so that you'll understand clearly what the objective is. Okay, we've just about made our first pass completely around the entire lens, and you can see the melted plastic, the burrs that have piled up on the edge there. It's very easy to clean them off once they cool. They just, they're pretty brittle. They snap right off. Go ahead and clean up all around the groove that you made there to be able to see how deep we've gone, and if we need to make any adjustments to the first pass, do an additional pass. It's a good idea to keep your workspace clear after you cleaned all the burrs off. Give it a good wipe down, get them out of the way so you don't scratch the plastics. As you can see, I'm working on a nice foam pad. Now that I've got all those burrs cleaned off, I could see there's some areas that I need to touch up where I didn't go quite deep enough, and some areas I did go all the way through into the cavity. That's alright, as long as we didn't go through all the way around the lens, we'll be able to put it back together with the exact correct geometry. So I went ahead and did a second pass once I could see better how deep I had gone through. This was my first time doing this on this particular model as well. So at this point we're ready to try and pop the lens off. The idea is to start from a corner and just place the screwdriver in and gently twist it. If it takes too much force or it starts bending either part, or distorting either part of the plastic, it means you have to cut more. It should pop with a concise click like that. If you find any tough spots, just cut them through a little bit more with the Dremel as needed, and continue to advance that crack, working one direction around the lens. And with that little stubborn piece, that's it. We're open now. You could see the internals of the factory taillight. You can see there's some red on the black backing and there's some black on the red lens. This is okay. We actually want this because when we glue this thing back together, we need all that material to help us align the lens to the bucket properly. So make sure you don't remove any of the material that makes contact, but you want to remove these sharp burrs that are around the edge. So the next step is to disassemble the factory taillight assembly. We're going to remove the 2 screws that are on the back of the black bucket, as you see. Those secure the reflector housing in place. The correct way to remove that inner reflector assembly is to release that locking tab with a flathead screwdriver, and then the circuit board is revealed. Next, we will remove the center screw holding the circuit board in place, and using the flathead screwdriver we will gently pry up on the circuit board as shown to release it from the housing. Okay guys, now that we have the taillight opened up, we're going to take our clear lens, or the red lens, and place it to the side so nothing happens to it, so it doesn't get dirty or dusty. The less cleaning we have to do later on that lens, the better the finished product will be. So now it's time for us to work on the installation of the retrofit kit, the Blaster-X circuit board. Your wires should look very similar to what you see here. There's some hot glue on the back which will prevent vibrational fatigue of these solder joints, so leave that alone. They shouldn't get in your way. And so now to prep the bucket, I'm going to refer to this part as the bucket. The first thing we're going to want to do is remove this vent hole cap on the right side. These are your taillight connectors for reference, so on the right side, this side. And it's just a matter of getting fingers on it and giving it a couple twists and pulling it straight off. It's just sorry about that, just a friction fit. I'm trying to work around the camera here to give you guys the best view, so bear with me. So these 3 wires control your turn signal operation and the strobe mode. That's the program wire. We're going to use that hole that was part of this vent hole to snake those wires through. Now, it has to be done in a particular sequence for these to fit in that small hole. What you want to do is one of the turn signal wires, just sneak it through. Then the second turn signal wire. And if you look at it, it has kind of like a half round section and a flat side, the round side, the slot, and a flat side. You want to put the rounded side, against the other wire. I don't know if you can see that. So it'll slip through. It just basically makes the 2 fit together nicely so it can slide through. And lastly, the gray wire. That'll just slip right in. So those fit almost perfectly, almost like it was meant to be. Now what we need to do is hook up the taillight wires. You should notice that there's some heat shrink covering these terminals. That's to prevent the terminals from impacting any of the exposed solder joints on the back of the circuit board and causing a short. It's very important that we orient the connectors, ground, running light, and tail light accordingly. The correct arrangement is actually
ground is first, from left to right. Then we have the running light, the blue, and then the stop, which is the yellow. Okay, so we have, these will slide all the way in without any pressure at all. We have black, blue, and then yellow from left to right. Okay, here are your rubber grommets where the main mounts are, so that's how it's oriented. Here's your connector on the bottom here. This is what I'm calling left and right. Black, blue, yellow. Ground, run, brake. Now, this mounting post here, this plastic piece, was part of the original taillight support. We need to make sure that these wires are not running on top of that post, because it will get pinched severely and cause a problem down the road. This board actually sits flush on top of that mounting post. So I've routed the black and blue on the left side of that post and the yellow on the right, and you can see as I push the board down, they actually just hug that post nicely. Just make sure these wires are nice and straight as well, and then it should just drop right into place. The circuit board is almost, oh, it is exactly the same size as the factory board, so these guides will keep it aligned properly. Okay, so that's in there. Now it's time to fix it with the mounting hardware that we provide. You should have received a baggie or 2 baggies with these components. There are some nuts and bolts and some connectors. These connectors we're going to use later, so just put them to the side. Now, we chose to use black hardware because it would provide the nicest finished look. And what you do is you slide one of the washers onto the bolt, okay, and drop that right through the existing hole, and it should come straight through to the back like that. Now, getting that second washer on could be a little tricky without the use of a plier or something like this. We want to put another washer on this side, right? And then obviously one of the nuts. These are nylon lock nuts so that nothing vibrates loose, but that also means it could be a little tricky to get this thing started. You may have better luck just going straight to your socket. It should be a 1/4 inch size, and doing it that way, yeah, actually that works much better. Now, because it has a nylon lock nut, you're only going to get a couple of turns before you have to actually put a Phillips screwdriver on that side to hold it still while you turn the other side. So I'm going to go get my Phillips. Okay, I got it. And we're going to tighten this down because it should help us with the other side if things aren't moving around so much. It's a little cumbersome because you could really use an extra hand, but you guys get the point. Alright, I went and got my ratchet handle because that was a lot harder than I thought it would be to hold that steady with one hand. With the handle on it though, it should be a piece of cake. Now, we really don't want to kill this thing. We don't want to make it too tight. It really just needs to be snug. Once it stops turning, I would say give it maybe 1/8 of a turn, you know, once you feel the friction. And you can actually see that the circuit board is being deformed downward in the reflection of the light. I hope that comes through. You see it's kind of like, you could see it's cupping. We don't want to put too much pressure on the board there because the support underneath, if you remember, was about a 1/2 inch ring. So we don't want to overstress the circuit board too much. The lock nut will do its job of keeping it from loosening up, so it just needs to be snug. We don't want to kill it. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side now. Put a washer, drop that through. Use my needle nose pliers here to get the washer on. And then I'm gonna put I'll take this off of here just to get it started. Drop my lock nut into there. Get it started on the screw. I think, yep, I got it, okay. And now put this tool back on there to hold it. And just tighten it down. Just until it's snug. Now the whole time we're fiddling with this, it's important that we're sure none of the wires crept up underneath that post, because a pinch wire is a long-term liability for sure. It's just a matter of time before one of those sharp solder joints punctures the wire with the continual pressure and changes in temperature. So I'm sure that I kept the circuit board tight, so there was no way for the wire to come up and over it. If you guys struggle with this whole little circus with holding this nut on the back while you tighten the front and the circuit board's jiggling, just be mindful that before you really tighten things down, you want to make sure that all the wires behind here are clear. That's what it looks like fastened. Okay, now that the circuit board is secure, the next step is going to be to install the turn signal connectors. Those are the two little connectors that we put aside just moments ago. Your connectors may be a different color. The vendors use different plastics for their batches, so the color is really arbitrary. But what is not arbitrary is which position the wire gets installed in. So for this particular bike, the correct position is with the locking tab on the top. You see that's the locking tab that locks it into the mating connector. On the bottom we have just these two little bumps, and the rest of it is smooth. So with the locking tab on the top, the correct position is the right hole. And this connector needs to be oriented properly as well. You want that square hole facing up. The bottom has that long slit, the top has that square hole. So you want that on the right side, and it just clicks right in. Same thing on this side. Locking tab on the top, square hole on the top for the connector, and then it just pops right in, just like that. Now at this point, we're ready to seal up the taillight, but I highly recommend before you do that, you take this over to your motorcycle, plug this into the main taillight harness, and plug these two turn signal connectors into the motorcycle harness, the turn signal connectors. Green controls the right blinker operation, and brown controls the left blinker operation. If you get it backwards, it's not the end of the world. All you gotta do is switch them. But before we glue this thing together, we want to be certain that all the electronic work inside is working properly, so we don't have to take things apart again. So go do that and we'll be right back. Okay guys, so at this point you should have tested it on your motorcycle for run, brake, and turns when you apply the turn signals, left turn and right turn. Once we're confident that all that's working properly, we're going to start sealing this thing back up. Now what we're going to use to seal it up is just a regular hot glue gun. Hot glue is honestly the best thing we've found in all the years of doing retrofit kits. You know, back in 2003, every taillight we made was a retrofit kit, meaning we were cutting open the factory taillights and just replacing the circuit boards. We used to use aggressive adhesives like crazy glue and things like that. The problem is the vapors that they produce actually leave deposits on the LEDs and the circuit boards inside. So it's definitely not the way to go. And honestly, there isn't much material that will be directly contacting the lens anymore because of the way, depending on how you opened it. Whereas a hot glue is going to fill this entire void and make a good seal. And there's never been any strength concerns with the hot glue itself. I mean, it's a huge amount of surface area. It's a complex three-dimensional shape. So the way the stresses will distribute themselves is not going to be an issue at all for the hot glue to conform. I've kept this perfectly clean. If you feel like you may have dirtied things, now would be the time to give them a good wipe with some alcohol. You should have been wearing gloves the whole time. Our red lens is clean as well. If not, give it a good once over. Maybe if you have some compressed air, you can give it a quick dusting like that. And what we're gonna do now is find out just how well we took this thing apart in the first place. If you cut it open according to the instructions, the lens will naturally find itself onto the bucket because of those chunks of material that are remaining and oddly shaped all around the perimeter. And what we're going to do is hold this thing relatively tightly, pick a comfortable place to start, and all we want to do is get glue inside of that ridge there. Now I like to work very slowly and let the heat of the tip kind of linger on the glue as I'm installing this. Make sure we don't have any gaps, that the glue is completely bonding to the lens and the bucket. And I'm working slowly so the glue has a chance to really sink down into the interface between the lens and the bucket there. Now, still got to be holding this thing because even where we started is still a little bit soft. Okay, now I reached a point where I'm going to want to flip this thing over to continue. I'll go back and check my work so far. I see there's a spot here that it came out a little bit lighter. The nice thing about the hot glue is we can go back and again work slowly. Let the tip heat the old glue and really make a nice finished product. Okay, we'll clean that up later. Alright, so it's definitely structurally strong enough now for me to flip it over. And remember guys, we're creating a watertight seal at the same time that we are gluing this thing together. So we don't want any air bubbles or pockets that'll allow water to get inside and ruin that amazing circuit board in there. So I've readjusted my hand position and I'm going to continue doing what we've been doing. I can see through the red lens that the glue I'm applying is making its way all the way down through that cut. Slow and steady. readjust my hand position once more. Careful not to touch the glue that's still warm. And we should be coming up on the beginning. That's it. Alright, so we're gonna hold on to this thing for a little bit to allow all of it to cure, to harden, I should say, or in this case, cool. Just inspecting my work while we go. It's looking pretty good, I have to say. I haven't done this in many years. Okay, we're looking good. A couple little pieces of... So that's what the finished product looks like. This thing is ready to mount up on the motorcycle. One more bit of foresight. The taillight is vented, as you see, but the factory has a clever little screen system, so no water droplets can get in there. Plus, the air path is convoluted, so water can't directly get into there. If you like, you can put some hot glue in this hole as well, just a little bit, just to seal it up. Another thing you could do is put some electrical tape around it. You know, that'll definitely prevent moisture from infiltrating directly. Again, it is vented anyway, but this is a rather large opening. Even an insect could probably crawl up in there. So I just put a little spurt of hot glue in there. That'll keep the wires nice and relaxed, and it'll also keep anything large from getting inside of the taillight housing. And we still have this functional vent on this side. Honestly, 2 vents, it's 1 cavity, not necessary. I think the engineer was appreciating the symmetry of having 2. 1 is definitely plenty. All the other taillights that we design at Custom LED, the factory taillights only have 1 vent, so don't concern yourself with losing the functionality of that vent if you decide to put the hot glue in there. Alright, I'm rambling, so that's it. Go put this on the bike and enjoy it. The programming instructions come with the taillight on that, with the retrofit kit, and that little piece of paper on the back side. And I hope you enjoy. Take care.